Welcome to QlikView.com. In this tutorial, we'll go over incremental load. Incremental load allows you to append to or update tables in your QlikView data model. Normally, it's used for large transactional tables as it can help reduce load time for these tables. The incremental load normally requires QVD files, and it works effectively with QVD files. So let's plunge into and see how it can be done. To summarize, I have 4 steps that we can use in this tutorial. The first is to load initial data. So for any load, you will have to have initial load, and that can be done once, and the script then can be commented, since you only need that step if you have to load all the data again. Step 2 is to get last data load date. So step 2 requires you to load QVD file for previously loaded data and extract the last load date, so that we can use that as a parameter to control additional records or updated records for the incremental load. Then the third step is to load incremental data. So now we are loading either inserted records or updated records. And the last step is to use not exist function. We'll go over that during the tutorial, but we will use that to control the number of rows from previously loaded records and append or concatenated that with the incremental load to get the final output. If it sounds confusing, fear not, I think it's not that bad. So let's get started. You can see step by step how it's being done, and once it's done, you'll see it's not that difficult. So first, I'm going to show you a file that I have created for this tutorial purpose. In this, I have five columns, and we have 10 records, essentially showing some order detail for this particular example. What we'll do is we'll use this as the initial load, and then we'll add some records and update some records, and as the tutorial progresses, we'll see how it impacts the QED. So going back to QlikView, I have created 4 tabs in my script, and these 4 tabs are essentially following same procedure or same steps that I have outlined initially. So first is to load initial or to do the initial load, and then to extract the second step to extract the previously loaded record date, so that we can use that to control number of records from the incremental load and the final concatenated load. The third step is to perform the incremental load, and the last step is to concatenate this incremental load with previously loaded records. So let's begin with the initial load first. Since we have the Excel file, what I'm going to do is go over and I will go into my data file. But before we go into that, let's go over the main tab. I want to show you a few variables that I've created. One is the resource data, and that is to store the source files in save QED, which will save our QED as an initial load and then subsequent incremental load. So these two variables are important. I'm going to use this two in the example as it progresses. So for the initial load, what we're going to do is very simple. Go in the table file and go to the data files, and there's this file called orders, which is what I'm using. So as you can see here, this has 10 records right now, and those are the ones I showed you in my Excel file. So all this records have certain dates, and product ID, customer ID, and so forth. So we'll make sure that the embedded labels are on and finish this. Now, the only change I'm going to make here is I will change this from to the variable that I'm using. So I'm going to use $ expansion with source data in orders. Simple enough. So that's the initial load. I'm going to save my file, and I will reload it. Okay, good. And let's go back and check to make sure that we have QED full. Let's see what we're storing. This is, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't really stored QED yet. So the first step is to load and then store. Cells into, and then we're going to use the variable again with $ expansion save QED cells dot QED. So again, this save QED is the variable that I created to store QED. So once this gets reloaded, the QED should be stored in this particular folder, and we'll see that. So let's store this and reload it. Okay. Thinking about something. Let's see. Did name the table. There you go. Save it. Reload. And there it is. So I'm going to go into this folder, and here it is. So sales is there, and one of the utilities I'm using to view QEDs is a handy utility called QED Viewer, and I encourage you to download it. It's very useful. You can Google QED Viewer, and you can download it from it's a blog out there, and the gentleman's done a great job. So turn QED Viewer, open a file, and yourself, and it's showing this 10 records loaded. So there you go. See, so we have all 10 records loaded. So this is our initial load. So there it is. Now, once initial load is done, as I said, this script should be commented and used only again if all the records need to be loaded in the future. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and comment this. and save it. So now we're going to test to see if we what needs to be done if we add records or update records. So for that, we're going to go to the step second, which requires first to load the original QED and extract the date updated, which is the column we've been using. This is going to be the key column to determine number of records to add or number of records to update. So going back here, I'm going to go to the second tab, and here I'm going to go. The step is to load the sales QED to get the latest date updated. So to do that, I'm going to start off with the table again named sales. Okay. And this time we're going to load this previously loaded QED. We're going to go back to the QEDs folder and get sales. You see this 10 records that we loaded from the initial load. Finish. So this is good. The only change I'm going to make in here is it's coming from the QEDs folder. So it's this variable. Let's use this, or we can say mention save QED. We save QED. Okay, sorry. We should save QED. Okay. So we have that. Now we want to get the latest date. To do that, we cannot sort QEDs. So I'm going to use a resident load to do that. So for a moment, we're going to think about creating a table and then sort records, and then we can drop this table. So let's create a table called sort sales. Okay, so I'm going to say load star. And this is going to be a resident, and we're going to use sales table. Order by date updated. So again, looking back here, the idea is to extract the maximum date, and that date will be the key column to determine how to do incremental load, and you will see that as we go forward. So we now sorted the orders, and then next step then is to capture this into a variable. So let's say let, and again, if you know the difference between let and set, let will require the expression to be reviewed or calculated before assigning it to the left side. So we're going to use we update date equals. Now we're going to use a pick function. So if you remember, pick requires a field name and the row that if you give a field name in a table and the row, it'll extract the value. So if it is 0 row, then it's the first record, and if it's -1, it's the last record. In this case, since we sorted it, we want to get the last record, and that's -1. So To do this, we will say date updated is our column, -1, and the table name is stored sales. Good enough. At this point, we don't really need this table sales, so we can drop it. Table. So this step will extract the latest date out of this QED, and then we can use that to do the comparison. Alright, so good enough. We'll save the script, and we'll go to the next step, which is to perform incremental load. Now here, the idea is to load file for new records and or updated records. So the process is same. We're going to call this table incremental, and we're dropping the table that we created before, but just to be safe, if you want to say no concatenate for now, and we'll say load. Okay, this time, let's do this. We're going to go back to this, and we're going to add a record here. If you want to leave this, we can copy this into a new tab. So we're going to use this tab here at this point. Copy this into a new tab. Okay. Expand it and call it new order. Alright, so we've done the initial load. Now assume, let's say we have few new orders after this. So say 450, and the customer ID is 26570, and the amount is $85,955. Can be any number, and we're going to say January 1st, 2013. So this is a new record essentially, and along with that, we also will update on this existing record that we loaded previously. So let's assume this particular order ID number 7, the amount was wrong. So instead of 90,780, it's going to be 100,780. So let's put that amount. So highlight this, and the date update is going to be January 1st, or say January 4th, 2013. So now we have a new record here and an updated record here. Right. Save this file. So let's go back to our script. Here we're going to use again table. Go back to Excel, our data file, orders. This time we're going to select new orders. Okay, and to load all these records. Okay, fair enough. So finish. And again, I'm going to replace this with variable. Now, we only want to load incremental records. So, or I should say inserted and or updated records. So for that, we're going to modify this SQL a little bit. We're in this load, we will put the where clause, and we will only include records with date updated greater than the update date, which is the latest date we got or extracted from the previous load. So to do that, we'll put a where date updated is greater than or equal $v, or the easiest thing would be to copy this. So there you go. So this will only extract out of this. The end effect is it will only extract two rows. One is this and this, because these are the dates greater than 12/18/2012. Which 12/18/2012 is the date stored in this variable. We update date or updated date. So by adding this where clause, we'll only add a new record and an updated record from our data set. Okay, good enough. So now the last step is to add this two records to the previous load. So how we do that? We're now going to load the previous load at QVD and do a concatenation with the incremental load. So now we start with concatenate. And then we're going to do a load from the QVD. We'll go back to the QVD folder, and we'll get the cells, this 10 records. Finish. Okay. Okay, here the key is to add only, to do it properly, we only want to get the rows that are not included in the incremental load. So the incremental load will have the order ID 7 and 11. So these are the two rows in the incremental load. So the trick here is when we load the previously loaded QVD, we would like to exclude those two order IDs, 7 and 11, because 11 is a new record, 7 is updated record. So to do that, we will have to use not exist function. And let me show you that. So we put where not exist, and we're going to use the primary key, which is order ID. So what not exist function does is it looks for this field order ID in the previously loaded records, and it'll exclude them. So since our incremental load has order ID 7 and 11, when I load my previously loaded QVD, which has all 10 records, original 10 records, these are the 10 records it has, it will exclude, there's no 11 there, so it will exclude 7. So essentially, the incremental load will replace this record 7 and add record 11. Good enough? So let's go back. So with this now, we have all the elements in place. Oh, and the last is to store this newly created QED into the sales QED. So store incremental into $v save QED sales.QED and then QED. Good enough. And then we don't really need the incremental table, so we're going to drop that table too. We don't need any tables in the data model because this is again this QED layer. So incremental. Good enough. So essentially this is it. So let's go over again. The first step is to load data initially, and that script should be commented after the initial load. Once that's done, for every incremental load, we'll extract the latest date updated and store it into a variable called v date updated date or update date. Okay, and then we do the incremental load. In this, we will load records that are either new or updated records. And last, we concatenate the incremental load with the previously loaded records by using not_exist function so that we don't overlap updated records. Essentially, we replace updated records with this and then drop the table. So once this is done, the table should have this 11 records, but the key is order ID number 7 should be replaced with this amount and this date updated. So right now it has, if you look at the QED viewer, it has this amount and this date updated. So we'll see that. So let's store this and reload. Nice clean. And we're going to go into the QED viewer again. File. And then we'll open this. And as you see, good enough. This is the updated one. And oh, see this date update. These are numbers. So anytime there's any numeric or any calculation done on date function that turns into a number. To fix this, what we need to do is, let's go back, and it's easy. We need to save this. We had this explicitly transform this as date updated. How lazy, so I'm going to replace this here. So this. Now the dates are looking great. So you see we got a new record, number 11. Number 7 has now new amount with new date updated. Let's do a few more. So we have, let's see, new order number 12, and the product ID is 480, and the customer ID is 11111, and the amount is 100,000, and let's say 01, 10, 2013, and then we're going to change number 8 to 140,000, and we're going to put it at 1/15/2013. So now we got this two new records. So let's say this and this. So we should have 12 records with one new record and order ID number 8 with an updated amount and date updated here. So we're going to store this. Go back to our incremental load app and run it. Great. So now if I open a file, again it shows new timestamp. There you go. So now I have 12 records. This is the newest record inserted, and number 8 now showing $140,000, and the date update showing 1/15/2013. So there you have it. What we've done here is we created a simple app that allows you to manage a large table, so that you can, once you do initial load, you can perform incremental load, subsequent incremental load, and with this technique, it will substantially reduce the load time for this large table that you have to load on a daily or weekly basis. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again. Take care.